Hi, welcome to the Vergas Show. I'm Sherry Hansen, and thankfully I've got Bev Fleitlin back for another segment on gardening. Bev is, if you notice around town, you'll see her out working the gardens. She's done a lot with the Vergas beautification plants and keeping that nice, but she's got some good information for us. In fact, I brought this up on the last show. This is my plant. And she even thought there was help for me on that.
These are bulbs, and they are supposed to dry back
they
like
are.
this.
Well, that's good. And so I don't have to feel quite so bad. But unfortunately, when somebody normally hands me a plant, it's like, oh, no, I've got to keep it alive. So, Bev, give us what you normally do.
I had, on that same aspect, had a lady come up to me one day and said she hangs a hanging basket every year in front of her house. And it looked nice when she brought it, and it didn't look good in a few weeks. Mm-hmm. What she was doing was hanging a sunny basket in the shade.
Okay.
And so it doesn't bloom very nice, and it can't go very well.
Well, and like on our last show, you said you got to look at the tags.
Look at the tags.
And you got to have good soil.
Good
and
soil.
you got to have good tools.
When you're planting your plants and buying them, make sure you're buying stuff that's going to bloom all year long.
Okay.
You don't want to have the great, wonderful, huge, and then spring garden, and then you've got nothing for the rest of the year. So buy your early growing plants, buy your mid-season plants, which are most of the cone flowers and the liatris. There's, just all sorts of things that bloom in the summertime. And then you want your mums and anything that blooms late, the asters late in the fall. When you're planting ornamental grasses, leave those up all year long.
Okay.
You'll get the sway of the wind. It's good accents for the winter time when there's nothing out there but white.
Which we've had a lot of.
Yes, which we've had an awful lot of, yes. If you're looking for shrubs and you just love this shrub, but it's going to get 6 feet tall and your window is 3 feet and you don't want to look through it, don't buy it, because then all you're doing is spending all your time pruning it down.
Makes sense.
If you go out to prune your shrubs, anything that blooms typically will set its blooms for the next year within 2 weeks of when it's done. So don't go out and prune off the tips of your lilacs and think that you're going to get blooms again if you do it in the fall or the spring, because then you're cutting off the buds.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yes. So if you're taking whole branches off, it doesn't make too much difference.
No.
That's not going to bloom anyhow. But those spirea would be your only, those you can prune at any time and they will bloom again. The little yellow blooming ones you see, or pink blooming ones all over. If anybody's growing Annabelle hydrangeas and they're not blooming for you, they bloom on new wood only. So you have to cut those back 6 to 8 inches from the ground. I do it in the fall. I have more time in the fall than I have in the spring. But if you leave them up, then there again you have that winter interest because the flower will stay all winter long.
It will.
It will. It's amazing. They look so fragile.
Yeah, they do, but they are pretty hardy plant.
They are very hardy. I sometimes even come and put them in Christmas wreaths, and they just...
Huh. So if you're going to be doing planting, give us some ideas on what the best thing to be doing.
When you're planting your plants, always check for your roots. When you take it out of the pot, break those roots apart a little bit. Spread them out. You can get quite rough with them. And even specifically with your annuals, when you take them out of those little grow packs, make sure that you're opening those roots up.
Yep. You got to have room to grow.
That's right, because otherwise all they're going to do is keep spinning the circle, and there again, they probably won't die, but they aren't going to thrive.
Right. Okay.
So get your soil, get your hole ready, put some fertilizer in if you've got some of that compost around. Even if you're composting grass clippings or leaves or something, work that in that hole so you've got some nice nutrients in there right away when you're planting your plant. Put it in. Frequently, I will make a little mound of soil, and I will take the dirt off of my plants and spread the roots all around this mound.
Oh, okay.
And then fill it back in with my handy-dandy little tool.
Yeah.
Make sure you're watering them in. I have more than once gotten caught by buying a plant midsummer with a lot of foliage on it, and I watered in well, and then I forget about it. And once you've spread those roots out, you got to make sure that you're giving them
lots of water.
Lots of water to begin with. Yes.
Yeah, they need that at the beginning.
Yes.
Okay.
When you're buying your bedding plants, the later in the year it becomes, the more root bound those things are.
Okay.
Before you put them in the ground, especially if you're buying them straight out of a greenhouse, it's good to harden them off, which just kind of typically means to put them outside for a little bit.
Before they're in the ground.
Before they're in the ground. You don't want them to go from a environment where they've had no wind or anything out there in the... So try to keep them out of the wind and in the shade maybe for a day, even if it's a sun plant, for a day or two. And then put them out in more sun and pull them in. The later in the season it gets, the more water they're going to need. So you need to water them at least daily. I end up with a whole bunch of them on my driveway, which is concrete, and they get too warm. If you miss one or two of them, what I find works really well is putting them in water, so that when you water it, it'll soak from the bottom up too.
Oh, okay.
Don't leave it that way for a big long length of time, but they will recover. And you can get away with that once or twice, but not too many times.
Okay. Do you ever work with vegetables?
I don't much. My husband, Miles, does. Gave me a little bit of information. He puts a generous amount of 10-10-10 in his garden.
Now explain the 10-10-10 again.
The 10-10-10 is a general fertilizer. Your first number is the nitrogen for the leaf growth. The second number is the phosphorus for the bloom or the fruit. The third number is potassium, potash, which is the strength of your plant and the color. He uses 10-10-10 because he has put an awful lot of compost throughout the years in it. The garden pretty much is basically almost all Dick's Super Soil.
Okay.
It was hauled in. Dick's Super Soil runs out of Otter Tail, the best soil you can get. He will be working with Crossroads this year, so you would be able to go down there. I don't know. He has some of his soil bagged. I'm not sure if they're going to sell the bagged stuff, but they would have the number for you on how to get a hold of him. When you're planting your tomato plants, don't rush into putting these plants in, because until the soil's warm, they're going to sit there and rot. Somebody called me and asked if Miles had put his potatoes in Good Friday. Well, of course, that's a real joke this year, but I think even last year, I think it was quite cool then.
It was cool yet, but we didn't have snow. So.
Right. Yeah. The plants aren't going to do anything. They're going to sit there and rot.
Yeah.
He takes and when he digs his holes for his tomato plants, he puts a whole shovel full of manure in his hole when he puts the tomato plant in.
Okay.
So that the roots are growing right into the fertilizer. Yeah.
Sure.
If you don't have the ability to have any kind of manure like that, he said just mix a little 10-10-10, but make sure you're turning it around a little bit.
Okay.
When you're broadcasting that 10-10-10 in the spring, especially in your to get off the subject for a second, your flower gardens, make sure you're not getting it in the crowns of your plants.
Okay.
So just try to spread it around the outside of your plants. So then when you do your tomato plant, going back to that, rip off the bottom leaves and put that whole trunk into your hole.
Okay.
Because all of that trunk will then grow roots.
That makes sense.
Yes.
And then you're going to have a solid rooted thing.
And then I think after that, he pretty much typically uses Miracle Grow to water them after that. If people have driven past our place, he has a 6-foot tall.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
Yes, tomato trellis, he calls it. Same with the onions. He fertilizes his onions.
Okay.
And that's why he grows huge
onions.
Yes.
Well, Bev, you've given us some great hope to think for spring and for
it will come. Things will grow.
Things will go, and I just so appreciate the information and for keeping Vergas beautiful.
No,
all right, now go play in the dirt. You have a good day in Vergas.